After being drafted late, Antonio Brown, better known as AB, would go nuclear in his career, amassing stats and becoming the most dominating player of the 2010s, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But just as fast as he started dominating, his career would abruptly hit a brick wall, and he, unfortunately, would be out of the league. Antonio Tavares Brown was born on July 10th, 1988 in Miami, Florida. While it wasn't actually in Miami, it was in one of the little towns around, which is considered the Miami area, so that's what we'll go with. He would spend his entire young life in Miami, up until college, in fact. He would attend Miami Norland High School, and there's not much on the internet about AB's high school career except for a few highlights that he's uploaded himself. At the age of 16, he would get kicked out of his house by his stepfather as they didn't get along very well. He was homeless for about 6 months. After having a great high school season, though, AB would be named the North Athlete of the Year. This is all going on at the same time. He would unfortunately miss his admission into Florida State University as his academics were not good enough, but he would still be able to get into North Carolina Tech. Antonio Brown would spend his first year in college at North Carolina Tech. I don't know whether he actually played football or not. I can't seem to find anything, so I'm not 100% positive, so I apologize for that. AB would go on to earn a scholarship into Florida International University in Miami. But before he could even join the team, he would get expelled for having a dispute. That's when he got the call from Central Michigan University. This is where AB's career would truly start. Over his first and only 3 seasons at CMU, he would catch 305 passes for 3,200 yards and 22 touchdowns. But that wasn't all. He was also a pretty solid rusher, rushing 72 times for 531 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just to remind you, CMU is a relatively small school, but it's still a Division I school. After having a couple of good years, AB would declare for the draft. After coming off a few relatively solid seasons in college, AB would now come to the combine to test his skills. He would go to the combine, in fact, and the results were kind of meh, compared to the others at least in his position. He ran a 4.56 40-yard dash and only had an 8'9" broad jump, which was the worst of all wide receivers that year. Despite having a mediocre combine, AB would still wind up getting drafted. After a few good seasons of football in college under his belt, that was way more than enough for the Pittsburgh Steelers to realize the talent that this kid had, and they would draft him on day 3. He was picked 195th overall in the 2010 NFL Draft. In just his rookie season, AB and the Steelers would actually end up going to the Super Bowl. Now, unfortunately, they would lose to the Green Bay Packers, who would be that year's champ, obviously. But besides that, there's not really much to talk about with AB's rookie year. He was rather unproductive. Obviously, this would be Brown's worst season in an NFL uniform and the rest of his career, posting only 16 catches for 167 yards. While in all technicalities, this wouldn't be his lowest statistical year, it is his worst by average. Brown's breakout season would be his second season in the NFL, exploding for 1,100 yards on only 69 catches. Nice. He would only score 2 touchdowns this season, but the interesting fact here is that Brown would be listed as a starter in only 3 games, and he would be elected to a Pro Bowl this season. In his 2012 season, he would take a step back statistically speaking, catching only 66 passes for 787 yards and 5 touchdowns. This being his best touchdowns-wise, but would still be considered a regression by any means. Brown would only play in 13 games this season and only start 10 of those. After having a down year in 2012, the 2013 season would be a turnaround. Antonio Brown would take his biggest step forward of his career. He would erupt for 110 catches and 1,500 yards, along with 8 touchdowns. This would be his breakout year, propelling him forward and starting his dominance of the 2010s. He would be elected to a Pro Bowl and a second-team All-Pro this season. AB would then go on to have even better seasons than you've seen already. Now, you could argue he has 2 of the best seasons ever by a wide receiver, but when it comes to narrowing just one down, I think I have it. His 2015 season would be his best ever, at least in my opinion. He would terrorize other teams by doing pretty much whatever he wanted. He would have 136 catches, yes, you heard that right, for nearly 1,900 yards to go along with 10 touchdowns. This would be the peak of AB's career, and from here on out, he would cap out at this, and would have a pretty good 3 seasons afterwards. This is where the end would start for Antonio Brown, and Stick with me because this is quite a bit of information to swallow yourselves. Fast forward to the 2018 season, this would be where the first of AB's antics would start. Posting on Instagram talking about a trade to get out of Pittsburgh, starting drama there. Further down the line in the 2018 season, the last week in fact, in a win or go home game, Brown would skip practice for the last week and the Steelers would bench him. This would be the last time Brown ever played a snap in Pittsburgh. Brown would demand a trade in the pursuing offseason and he would get his wish, being traded to the Oakland Raiders, and who but the Raiders. As we were headed into the 2019 season, we received news. Brown would miss the start of the season due to a foot injury. We later came to find out that his foot injury was self-inflicted because of the lack of protection when inside of a cryotherapy machine. The NFL would implement new helmet safety rules, which AB took to heart because he felt the NFL was targeting him so he couldn't wear the favorite helmet that he had, going as far as painting over his old helmet. Following everything that was happening, Brown appeared to not even want to play. Come to find out, that was the case, and he would refuse to play for the Raiders that season. Brown was most certainly happy about this as he released a video on social media of him jumping for joy over being released. Being a free agent wouldn't last for long as the New England Patriots would sign Brown just days after the release. He was then accused of doing some pretty bad things to his old personal trainer. It wouldn't stop there though, as more allegations would come in, and after 2 weeks the Patriots had had enough and released him. That would be the last time AB saw the field that season. Having even more antics in 2020 though, as he would post a string of videos not for the faint of heart. Just a couple of weeks later, there was an arrest warrant out for AB, where he wouldn't be sentenced to jail but would have 2 years of probation. Brown would come back for the 2021 NFL season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and would actually be part of the team the entire season, helping them win a Super Bowl. News would come out about Brown faking a vaccination card and he would be suspended. He would come back and play just 2 more games in his career, and in the last one would be Brown's infamous scene, ripping his jersey off and storming out of the stadium, where we would find the reason it was all of that, in fact, was because Brown had suffered an apparent injury, yet the Bucs wanted Brown to play through the injury, and when he wouldn't, the Bucs caught him there on the sideline, causing the whole ruckus. Overall, Antonio Brown's career did have its ups and downs, just like every other athlete. Now, with Antonio Brown, it's not more or less about his skill or whether he had a good year or bad year, it's more or less about the antics with him. But there is no denying that Antonio Brown was probably the most influential player of the 2010s. So, I mean, there's no debating his greatness. There truly is no debating his greatness, as I already said, but the one thing we can talk about is the positive impact he had on the NFL landscape. While he was in his prime, he was one of the most renowned players that we knew. The former cover of Madden was so incredibly talented that he had people debating whether he would go down as the greatest to ever do it or not. His reign of the NFL terror started in 2013 and went through 2018. He was the face of the NFL in the 2010s and might have been the most dominant player ever. In 146 games played, he would have 928 catches, 12,291 receiving yards, and 83 receiving touchdowns. He would also be elected to 7 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pro first teams, and 1 second-team All-Pro, being the runner-up for Offensive Player of the Year 3 times. Unfortunately, all greatness must come to an end, and for Brown, it ended in probably the saddest way possible. Whether Brown's actions were caused due to mental illness or not, primarily CTE as we know it, we'll never truly know. Personally, I do believe CTE is what caused and affected his career. While his career got completely derailed, I would still like to say thank you to Antonio Brown for giving us so many memorable moments. Prime Antonio Brown was a different animal. Now, the question is, what would have happened if Brown had managed to stay out of trouble?